Hello folks, welcome back to Wild Wild West's Gelvin Valley. You know, I don't know what is causing this, but I come in here and go back to my combine and both it and my truck are at the bottom of the field. I came out here and I watched them zoom down the field kind of during the startup process. I really don't know what's causing that, because the last I knew they were, sitting right up here in the cut. So, well, don't know what's causing that, as long as they don't breach the fence. Maybe the lesson I need to be learning from this is when it's time to close a game and save it. Maybe I turn the combine sideways. Has anybody else ever noticed this? I don't know if it's a function of drive control or just what is doing it, or if, it may have something to do, maybe it is drive control. I don't remember it doing this kind of thing when I had the old version, but I don't know, maybe I was just more careful in how I parked the combine or something. Who knows? Anyway, we are still harvesting on a very steep hill here, field number 37. Oh, and yeah, by the way, I'm pretty sure I had the parking brake on. I guess I could understand if there was no parking brake and you came in and it was headed for the bottom. But who knows? Kind of a funny anomaly, I suppose. Oh, and there's a reminder of how much money I'm running out of. Yeah, I think this particular episode I'm going to be running over the contract again. I'll get charged again and go further in the hole. And I gotta say, I think I commented on this last episode. I watched some YouTubers, like all of the other ones. They don't seem to have my money difficulties, so whatever they're doing is way better than what I'm able to figure out financially. And I call myself an accountant. Well, just because I can count it doesn't mean I know how to bring it in, that's for sure. So anywho, maybe I will finish this. I'll easily finish this episode. Ordinarily, I would head straight ahead to that small patch next to the farm, but I believe I'll save that. I don't think I can get through the fence, or through the gate with my larger header here. So I believe what I'm going to do is do this. I got to do 1 and 2, and I also have 47 to do. Number 18 is still, I got quite a bit of harvesting left, and here I am into the afternoon, so yeah, there's still I still have a fair piece to get done here. So it's the more I put in the bin, the tougher it's gonna be to sell it all within the hour. So I'm kind of thinking ahead of that. I know I've talked many times about the game's algorithms for pricing crop, and if you do it, it changes at the hour, and it's based on how much has been sold of a particular commodity, and then it has a mechanism that over time, the price will gradually come back up. But you can drop it like a rock almost immediately, just by selling a lot of products. So I want to be careful, that I'm able to get as much sold within an hour as I can. So I may, when I do it, I'll have to see what the rental price is, of a truck. It may be I may be money ahead by hiring more than one truck and just have a convoy between home and the sale point to see, if I can get all that done in a quicker period of time. But we shall see. Last episode, I commented on some of my other series that I have going, and one of them I worked on tonight, and I gotta say, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. It's, the Glenn Ellie one and the story one, and it just roaches my voice to try to do all these different voices for the characters. Maybe because I picked the most obtuse, gnarliest sounding voices or whatever I can conjure up, and it's probably a little too hard on the old vocal cords, so probably should have recorded this before I recorded that. But oh well. One of the whole points or goals of mine in even doing these is simply to exercise the old pipes, because I just don't have very good ones. But something I wanted to talk about as a topic tonight, a lot of times during my working hours, I spend a lot of time at a desk, and depending on what I'm doing, sometimes I need every cell in my brain to do what I do, so I'm not able to listen to things as I work. But other times, I'm able to take in podcasts or that kind of thing. And so today was one of those days. I listened to a podcast kind of designed for, I think it was geared towards men. I'd never heard this fellow before, and he was talking to men who live their life and as nice men, take that for whatever it means, and they wake up one day and realize that they've basically been walked on their whole life. They've made sacrifices for people who don't reciprocate, and on and this kind of thing. And so I think the podcast or whatever was a pep talk for people falling into that category and how to rise out of the ashes, as it were. And it was interesting. Everybody out there that says something and puts it out on YouTube or on the internet, everybody's got a perspective, and it doesn't mean we always agree, with what people say. And I gotta say, some of the things this guy was saying, he must have, you know how sometimes when someone complains or makes an issue about something, that depending on how they present it, somebody may ask them, who hurt you? Basically, in so many words, you're telling the person, you're spouting a bunch of nonsense. Why did somebody hurt you and you got all bent out of shape, and that's, why you're ranting about whatever. And some of this maybe kind of came off like that. I think the fellow was divorced, but I don't know. Some of us, maybe we're not all blessed with a good dad, a good mom, a happy home life, or a good marriage, and stuff happens, and it's hard to get along and all that. And if you have I know what the term was. They called it people pleaser. And if you are a people pleaser type, you can exhaust all your energy doing that for people who don't care two hoots about you, or only will use you in some fashion for their own ends, and you get nothing out of the deal. So I realize that's a dynamic. It can happen in the home, it can happen in a marriage. And I'm hearing that silly helicopter go overhead outside. I don't know if that comes through. Maybe it's a time of day when they do it. I have to remember, don't record at 10 after 9 in the evening. Oh. So that is a real dynamic, like I say. Oh my goodness, I'm almost full. Probably won't quite, or will I? Will I? Nope, not quite. Okay, reset my brake. Maybe I need to start setting my brake to help keep it from going downhill even when I turn. I've noticed, yeah, see, the brake was set. I saw it was set. You know what it is. I bet I know what happens. I bet the player has to first occupy the vehicle. Otherwise, it doesn't know the brake is set. It's probably something in the coding. I bet that's what it is. Once you select onto the vehicle, you can see the brake was on, so it would stop. But maybe prior to the end, it doesn't know it. This is terrible steep. No wonder it'll take a long time to get up the hill. Come on, you can do it. You got this. Whew. There we go. This probably isn't going to be quite enough to fill entirely, but folks, we just about have this all wrapped up. So as soon as I get done here, I'm going to take him up the hill a little bit further, and I'm going to have to move. You know, my combine is just about out of fuel, so I think I'm going to need to fuel him up. Probably need to give him a full tank because there's quite a bit left. Alright, yeah. 83%. Come on, can you creep ahead? You know, it isn't wanting to... Wow. Is that because it's interfering with the... No? Wow. Well, there we go. Finally it took place. Maybe it's a keyboard input issue. I'll put my tarp on. Yeah, so when you're within the same field, you can make a lot of good progress, but as soon as you're done and have to move fields, it's inefficient, just like it is in real life. All right, I'm gonna park you here, turn you off, back to the combine. Get this last little dab. Pick it up. So, anyway, I don't mean to... I mean, what do I know? This man was sharing his opinion, and I'm sure he has a lot of good things to say. Maybe I feel a little sensitive to what he said, because maybe I'm the guy he's trying to talk about. And, so he was just going on, and there were some things, that he said that resonated. It's kind of like, these people who fill up your schedule with things that they want to do, and you just go along with it. And being the person who says, no, I'm not going to do that, or I don't want to do that, because usually the thing you don't want to do, it's a good thing. Maybe it's a family gathering. Let's see, I'll wind up kind of, sort of. Maybe it's a family gathering and people want to get together, and it's like, we've just done this already, and there's other things I'd like to let me back up here just a little bit. Maybe... Now let me try that. Alright, I'm going to do a jerk move and leave it right there. And I'm going to go up to my tractor here. Let me get it all locked and loaded. Alright, I think we're on. Down the road, we are going to... Oh, I think it's on there. This is so handy. That other one, this was slipping and falling all over the road. Okay. I'm going to head up the hill. Let me see here. I got to go way up the hill. I can go straight ahead, but I think I'm going to hang a right. and take care of the, what would that be? Not field 38, it'll be 47. We continue this on. And this also has a double, here's a double gauge right here. Oh, shoot, that's probably, probably need to get closer. He could meet a car coming around the corner. So, yeah. Maybe, is there a way I can turn around right here? I want to pull off into one of these ditches. Maybe, just maybe. Yeah, I can. Oh! Four-wheel drive through there. I didn't see the ditch. Just kind of blind ditch. All right. Yeah, since we have to be extra careful, make sure. All right, then you set the brake. We don't run over any crop. I'll leave those on. Let me set it free. No, I don't want to set it free. Yeah, I think I'll wait till I'm up here. Who knows where the header will try to go. Alright, I'm going to need this fella. And so, why don't we head on up the road? There was one interesting thing this fellow said, and that's kind of the topic I wanted to discuss. And it was, he said people who take back their life, their whatever you want to call it, where they cease being a people pleaser. There's some characteristics they have, and one of them is, when the RSVP happens, if you're not going to go, or you become, how do you put this, more intentional. And so if you want to go, that is the deciding factor. And maybe most of the world says, well, duh, that should always be the factor. Like if it's a gathering of some kind, a work, whatever, if you don't want to go, you shouldn't go. Or if you can't or whatever, there should be no problem with that. And who knows how much of this is just in a person's head versus other people genuinely taking advantage of someone. But I know that can happen. So he says, when RSVPs happen, now people that are healed kind of from this, they will RSVP yes or no, and that's it. They won't, I'll leave it there. They won't give an excuse or, go pages and pages on explaining why they can't make it or that kind of thing. He says they don't feel the need to. They simply say yes or no, and then other people, just basically have to deal with it, with them showing up or not. And there's other things that happen too, and this is the one I really wanted to visit about because it triggered some memories. And people are probably going to be afflicted with this. I don't know if it's part of people pleasing or not, but the concept of guilt. When you feel bad over something you did or something you didn't do, there can be a feeling of guilt or regret. More than just regret. I mean, guilt kind of, it sinks into your heart, and it isn't just something that comes to mind and you brush it off and go about your way, but it sits there. And so, it made me think of a few things, from my past. I got lots of things I could be guilty over, being a sinner like everyone else on the planet. But there are some things that really stand out. Some big things, maybe, that you would say, where I should probably by all rights be in jail for having done those things. And then other things that when I share it with you here, you'll say, well, that seems probably pretty little or pretty puny. So like, dude, what's your problem? Get over it. But it's, now what do I do with you? Maybe I go around, ring around the rosy. get off the road up here. Hopefully I can. Yeah, maybe park right there. So, for example, I think I've shared this story before. When I was a kid, don't remember how old, probably high school age or knocking on the door of high school. Oh, wait a minute. I got to... where's the... There it is. Oh, I drove right by it and I didn't do anything. Good grief. Alright, I'm going to come up here with some fuel and give the combine a drink. Do a little servicing here. There we go. Try to go over the combine now. Yeah, that's good enough to fill up. So when I was a teenager, or probably on the cusp of high school, whatever it was, I grew up in a home. I had 4 brothers. I'm the oldest of 7. 4 brothers, 2 little sisters. And, you know, it was one of my aunts who took us out to eat. I don't think the girls were with us for some reason. It was just us boys, all 5 of us. And we went to some pizza joint in town. And my aunt gave me, I think at the conclusion of supper, a lot of times these pizza places, you know, they'll have video games in them. You know, the old school stand-up kind where you feed it a quarter or a little bit of money and you get to play for a while. Anyway, some of those. So, you know, before the supper, we were over there drooling on the things. And growing up, I'm not going to say we were poor. Of course we weren't. It's just mom and dad, you know, with so many children, we didn't go out to eat very often. And if we did, we weren't over there wasting quarters, you know, in the machine. You know, it just wasn't something we did. But I think my aunt saw us kind of looking at those machines and she took pity on us. And I think she gave me 5 quarters to take over and share with my brothers. So they were in there after supper looking at the games and, you know, like I say, drooling on them. So they were, I went around and I handed out quarters to 3 of my brothers, but I figured my youngest brother, see, I'm going to get in the ditch here if I do this, aren't I, for some reason, in my own good thinking at the time, I just figured he was so young that he just didn't know anything, and he probably wouldn't know what to do, you know, with this particular game or how to do it. And so, therefore, because of this, I better just use, you know, the quarter. So I selfishly took the 5th quarter, and so I got 2. And so I handed them out. My brothers were doing it. I don't remember what my youngest brother was doing. Probably was watching one of the other boys. You know, sometimes we would pretend to play those silly games, and, you know, we weren't playing them at all. It was just whatever they had on, you know, the display to induce people to play. So he may not have caught on at the time. I really don't remember. But somehow was eventually figured out that, you know, I, probably because I was able to go again, someone smelled a rat and wondered how I got a 2nd quarter. And eventually the aunt figured it out, and she chewed me out for basically stealing, you know, that wasn't, I had disobeyed her and not shared with my youngest brother and just was being selfish. Now, 25 cents. I mean, we're talking nothing. You know, in the grand scheme of things, immaterial, as they would say. But I have remembered this to this very day, because afterwards, you know, when I thought more on what my aunt said, and then thought about, you know, this little opportunity that I stole from my baby brother, you know, I could go give him a sack of quarters now, and it would mean nothing to him because I can't give back to him the experience that he would have had as a little kid. I could take him down to some place that has video games. I could buy him some all day long. Well, he wouldn't care. It just doesn't mean the same, right? And it's one of those things that has, now my brother has long since forgiven me. I don't think he gives it a single thought. And he's plenty well off now. It isn't like the loss of a quarter or whatever has harmed him in any way. Not at all. And we have a wonderful relationship. So it isn't something he's held against me, but kind of like I was saying a little bit ago, with the concept of guilt. And I know I'm forgiven. So I'm not saying it sits on my mind constantly like this burden, but it's just kind of a reminder, anytime, the good Lord needs to humble me, and this comes to memory of when I stole an opportunity from someone and there was an experience they missed out on because I cheated them out of it. My own brother. And maybe there's things in your life where you've done it. Like I say, we're all different. Maybe you're able to just pass those things off easier than I can. So I don't know. Maybe the gentleman that was having this podcast, maybe those were the kinds of things he was talking about. I apologize for it. He's forgiven me. There should be no reason for me to continue thinking about it. And generally speaking, I don't. I'm not trying to say I have just a moral dilemma or a psychological problem day by day that is crushing or debilitating. I'm just observing there's something I did that no matter what I do, I can't ever make it right. And there's many things like that in life, and obviously, taken to an extreme. If someone, were to commit murder, it's, some people figure, well, I'll just try to be a good person and give more, do good deeds, give more than I take or whatever. And, well, where does that leave the person who literally takes a life or some of those kinds of actions? But anyway, I still sometimes feel guilt over that. I know it seems silly, but it's, when you steal something, especially from an innocent, from a little kid, which my brother was at the time. I mean, shoot, I was just a kid too. But I can't go back and undo it. Wish I could, but I can't. And so, according to this fellow here, and again, I don't know if this is a people-pleasing trait or what, it'd be learning to overcome whatever feeling of guilt, that comes to mind whenever you think about that. And again, I want to reiterate, this isn't something I live with day to day. It just, was something, when he was talking, I was reminded of it. Now, why would I be reminded of it, if it was something that I've long since, put to the dustbin of history or whatever as forgive, forget, however you would say it. It's still in the old mental space. Head or down, out or round is always the toughest. I think I'll make it. Then I thought of another one that I did, and this one as a dad. So, and again, maybe someone hearing this, I don't know, maybe you'll say, yeah, that was really a jerk move. But here's what it was. Where I live in this neighborhood, there's a number of homes. It's a suburban type setting, number of homes all in a row. And a number of years ago, there was a family that lived on a home next door to ours, or close to next door. And my son became acquainted with a little boy that was he was probably, oh boy, he's 6, 7 years old at the time. Just trying to remember my son's age. He was a little boy, just getting ready to go to school. And he and this other boy, they said, we're not always going to see each other. So, but I know I can hear you over the air sometimes. So why don't we come up with some sounds, that we can say to get each other's attention. And they'll mean certain things, like kind of a sound like a toot-toot, just like two sharp dots or whatever that they would holler out, and then they would hear the other one go toot-toot, and that's how the other person was over there. So for a while, that's really all it was, just a special little sound that they had between them, that they would say it. And actually it was more than just him. It was a couple other cousins and boys in the neighborhood that would do this. So they would holler this sound, and it was kind of cute. I mean, they could tell if he was over there, and it was a means of communicating. Well, one time, and this is where I stubbed my toe. Oh, gotta go get this. I see my son. He's got a piece of paper, and he's writing down all these things. He's like creating his own language. So one of the things, of course, is the doo-doo or whatever that they hollered, to say hello. And then he had written down all these other things. Maybe it was how are you? Can I come over? Just very basic things. And so my son was telling me, we're going to share all these commands, and that way we'll all have them, and we'll know exactly what we're saying, but nobody else will know what we're saying. And I can't remember what I told him. I don't know if it was time to go to bed. I don't know if we had somewhere to go, but I basically stopped him from doing it, and I said, he ain't going to remember all those things, nor is anybody else. And so I kind of poo-pooed it. And then later, I don't know how long it took, but I still feel guilty over that one. You know what? I was telling him the truth, because what I remembered was I did it as a boy too. I remember having these CB radios on the playground at school and trying to spell words, on the air. And I mean, they had Morse code on the air so you could figure that out. But the other kid wasn't going to listen to what I was Morse coding to him. And so I knew here that, whenever my son came up with, there's no way that the other kids were going to do it, because it would get complicated. It's like learning a language. There's just a lot going on. So, but I denied him the creativity or the creative exercise of doing it, and I don't think he ever picked the paper up to try it again. And like I say, I feel bad about that. So, alright, I've set the break. That's probably not good enough. You know what? Since I'm going to be done with this episode here, sorry for going long, I am going to... I don't know if this is good enough. Is this downhill? Yeah, maybe I better do it this way. This is why I need a hillside combine, eh? Alright, set the brake, turn off. Here we go. Well, I need to haul this to storage. Our truck is full. But thank you so much for coming along. I don't know what I'm just babbling about this evening. Guilt is a real thing. And when we screw up, those things can stick to us. Even if they're forgiven, it's sometimes hard to be forgotten. I don't know if you have any of those, but whatever you want in the comments. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.